Oh, I'm speaking to Joe Martin in the comfort of his house here in Dublin Street in Dundalk. And Joe was very much involved, like an awful lot of us, way back. I'm going to say the 40s and 50s. I hope I have the dates right. But we're going to talk for a little while about a man that came from the same street, actually, as Joe, Dublin Street in Dundalk. And his name was Joe McEntee. Joe, to be none of the young people would have any idea of Joe McEntee. Just in a few words before we start talking about all the things that he was involved in, how would you describe him?
I live in Saint, Harry. I live in Saint, but a strange man until you got to know him. He was born in number 57 Dublin Street, and 4 doors from where I lived. But I think it was the late 20s or early 30s that the council decided to change the numbers on the doors in Dublin Street. I was born in number 3, but it was 49 when I was born then, you see. And McEntee's were number 7, and they never changed the number. They wouldn't change it for the council. Well, Joe came from a family of 6. He had 5 brothers and 1 sister. They were real good people, like, you know. One of them was a brother. He was stationed in Galway, and Barney was married to a dentist, very, very old when he got in the 40s. Michael married in girl in Dublin, and James worked in the brewery. And Joe worked in the railway until it closed, and then he was a security man in the brewery.
So, Joe, what would make somebody that lives in a house like that in Dublin Street, just an ordinary man, start up something like the Joe's Boys Club? How did it start at the very beginning?
I'll tell you how it started. There was a team called St. Malachy's, and they used to maybe had a room up in Casey's shack in a wee place before Oriel Park. And Joe was at a game, a minor game, St. Malachy's were playing in, and I don't know who asked him, would he run the team? So Joe said yes, and after a few weeks, he found out that there was a loft in O'Connell's yard in Dublin Street. That is where the road is now, going to Tesco's. That was one big house there and a big yard, and he rented that. And they had to go up a ladder to it until they got stairs. And Joe started a club there, a minor club, football club, and he called the club Cinderville.
Now, I'm speaking to Brendan McQuaid, and Brendan has retired, of course, a few years now as station master up in the Dundalk station. And I just want to talk to him a little bit about how can you become a station master, or how did you start, Brendan, what was your first job after you left school?
Well, after I left school, I did the railway clerical exam, CIE clerical exam. I did various other exams as well, the civil service, etc. And I got the CIE exam, and I did a week in training course in Orlsena and Gardner Street in Dublin. And then I was moved to a station in Ballymote in Sligo for 12 weeks, where I got experience. The idea was that you went to a small station where you got the experience in dealing with ticket offices, signal cabins, freight off yards, lorry departments, etc.
And Brendan, at that time, did you find that interesting, even though you were very young?
Oh, it was very interesting, Harry. Yeah, because it was experience, and it wasn't all that busy. Like, to be truthful to you, the station master was a gentleman, and the signal men were very good, and you could go down and sit in the signal cabin for a couple of hours, and they'd show you all the levers, etc. You know, I had a bit of railway experience before that, because my father was the inspector in Barrack Street, and I had worked as a messenger there in 1957, 58 and 59 and 60, you know, delivering letters around the town.
Yeah, so you knew what it was going to be like then.
Yeah, I had a fair idea. And then again, I was the fourth generation railway. My father worked in Barrack Street. His father worked in Barracks. That was my grandfather. And my great-grandfather was worked at Monaghan Road on the Irish North Western Railway. So we had the experience. The fellow says I was the fourth generation, you know. And I often think too, when I got the job, you know, you were saying about that I had two maiden aunts who lived in Barrack Street, Foxes, that had a small shop there. I'm sure people would know them. But when I told them, I was 18 years of age, and I told them I passed the CIE clerical exam and I was being appointed a clerk, the both of them were raptured and said, "Oh, that's fantastic, Brendan. There's a pension with that job."
It was the name of the game in those days, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I just I often say to myself, there I was at 18 years of age, and 47 years of my life were just written off like that.
But look at you now, Brendan. You've got the pension that we're talking about.
I know that. I know.
Like in their own way, they were right. But it was very hard to comprehend at that age. You know?
Well, of course they were right, Harry. Like, I mean, it was the name of the game in those days. Sure, you probably remember yourself. What the name of the game was: get a job and hold on to it. Like, I mean, either that or you just took the boat, you know, to England, and that was it, you know.
Des Casey. Now, Des, a very good friend of mine for a long, long time. And we would know Des, of course, through football. Today, we're going to talk to Des about something that I've always thought about. Been a fan of Dundalk FC all my life, and Oriel Park, of course. Des lives just next door to Oriel Park. And I just want to start by asking, was it just a field? Was the Caseys involved at the very, very beginning? Or how did it come into being?
Well, it was known as Casey's Field, and it was my paternal grandmother, Mary Casey, was the owner of the property, and she died in 19th of August 1927, and because she died intestate, my father, being the eldest of the children, became the administrator of her estate, and as there were 3 boys and 3 girls. By law, they were each entitled to a share of her estate as such. Now, it was probably about 8 or 9 acres altogether, fronting on to the Carrick Road. And that meant, in fact, that my father and the 2 brothers and his 3 sisters, each had a plot of land covering the right down from per the entrance to Oriel Park now to Master O'Neill's place, as it was known. But my father was very interested. My father had been the secretary of the Dundalk District League, and the field prior to any development was known as Casey's Field.
And Des, how far over did it go towards the RD Road?
It went to the Oriel Park itself was about 6 acres, so it went about a third across. You know, the old pitch would have been a better indication of that. Yeah. And anyway, so it was known as Casey's Field, and it was used for youth and minor matches and junior matches at the time, before Joe's Field came into it. But in 1936, my father had been a member of the committee. They did it, and the club, Dundalk FC, had been playing all their home matches in the athletic grounds.
That's down the Rampart.
Down the Ramparts at the time, which was an excellent stadium, but they decided they wanted to go for a new home of their own.
Yeah, because it was the Gaelic played down there as well, Des.
Yes, Gaelic Young Irons, and yeah. He was involved, he was the secretary of the Dundalk, and the committee at the time, the Dundalk Football Club Committee, decided to take on with Oriel, which was eventually became Oriel Park. Casey's Field became Oriel Park, and the first match was played in August 1936, and that was the beginning of it.